I read this Am I a Lesbian document, and I was like, Jesus Christ, I've literally always been gay. Like, I'm a lesbian. That's where the disconnect with men comes from. Hey Diva, welcome back to my channel, and I know that's right. With Natasha Night. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Natasha Night. Think of me as your favorite unapologetic diva who's here to help you fill your cup of confidence and inspire you to embrace your most authentic selves, bask in self-love, and harness that divine feminine energy, honey. So if you haven't already joined the Diva family of confident, unapologetic people who live out loud, please make sure that you do so by subscribing and hitting that notification bell so you get a notification every single time I upload a video. Trust me, you won't want to miss it. All right, now let's get started with the video. So, a lot of people have been asking me to do my coming out journey. So, I'm going to do my coming out story. So, where do I start? So, I'll start from the beginning. Well, a lot of women in my family, but specifically me and my sisters, because there's three of us, and then I have another one that is with my dad's baby mama. But basically, um, we got our period early, like around the ages 9 and 10, so like very early into elementary school. But I didn't get any like hormonal things until about middle school. So all throughout elementary school, I never had a crush. Like everyone I liked as a friend. So boys, girls, I liked as friend. And then middle school was when I started to notice a difference. So there were these guys that all the girls liked. There was this guy. Um, so there was like three really popular guys: Trent, Marcus, and Bono. And they were the guys that like all the girls loved, right? Like the swooning over and oh my god, and they're so beautiful and da 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 da. And it's really funny because all these girls are going crazy off of these guys. And I'm like, they look good. Like they dressed really nice, they smelled nice, like they literally looked good. But my thought was I wanted to be their friend. They're over there like, oh, I just want to kiss him. I wish you would kiss me behind the portable and like all these things. And I don't have these feelings. So I'm feeling like very left out. So I remember there was a guy, I think his name was David, that I lied and said I had a crush on, but I didn't have a thing for him at all. Just because I didn't want to seem weird. And then I remember my first crush came like I think a couple months into the first like the school year basically. It was definitely because like school started in August and she came in like September, October, right? And I just remember I was in sixth grade and I was in my math class and Mr. Jackson was like, oh, this is our new student, Stephanie Carucci. So she comes in and I swear it's like those movies where like the hair, the curls are flowing in the wind and like they're like walking in. She was one of those girls that like were so beautiful that she just commands the attention of a room. And she was half Brazilian, half Italian. So she was like dark skinned, piercing green eyes, super curly hair, and then she spoke Portuguese and Italian, obviously, as well. And she was curvy. Like she was in sixth grade, but she looked like an eighth grader or a high schooler, like genuinely. So I don't know if she was making a schmecks, but it looked like it because of her body. Like she was like tiny waist, big perky boobs, like wide hips, thick thighs, fat ass, like literally as a sixth grader, okay? And so that was the first time that I had a crush. And I knew because I just wanted to be her friend. I wanted to be around her. And I'm not a shy person, so I was like, I'm gonna make her my friend so that way we can hang out during PE. And in PE, there's times where you go into the girls' locker room and you have to change. And that's when I would be like looking at her and I would be looking at the eighth grade girls. But the eighth grade girls, they're like, girl, you're so funny. You be staring. Like, we know you're gay. And I'm like, no, I'm not. But I was. And so, anyways, I remember later on, because my body reacted, I remember there was a throbbing sensation near my kitty cat. And so I remember I went home because my mom worked for the IRS. And so we got computers in the house. And she specifically had one in my room. And that's where I would do all my journaling online and everything. And so normally when I go home and I'm on the computer, I am playing Spider Solitary or I'm like writing my friends on AIM. Like, do we remember AOL Messenger? Anyways, so I'm either doing that or like Hotmail Messenger, like MSN Messenger. Those were the two things that I was doing. It was either like writing my cousins in England or writing my friends on there and playing Spider Solitary, like very innocent stuff, right? But this day, I was curious. So I went on the Google, but it wasn't called the Google at the time. I think it was called Bing or it was something else. It was definitely not Google. God, I'm showing my age. But anyways, so I start like typing up and I'm like, can two girls kiss? And then I'm like, can a girl like a girl? And then I'm like, can two girls make the schmecks? What does it mean if a girl likes a girl? And that's when I learned that I'm lesbian. And I'm like, oh my God, that just sounds really nasty. And then, so then I was like researching, and then I'm like, what if a girl likes a girl and a boy? And then it said bisexual. So I was like, okay, so I'm going to say I'm bisexual because I am not ready for lesbian. So, anyways, what happened? So, fast forward, I didn't know that my father was checking my history on what I was doing on the computer. So I go to sleep, not really thinking much. And then he checks it and sees that and immediately tells my mom. And it's like, you gotta talk to our daughter. Like, she's looking up lesbian stuff. Like, she's literally asking if two girls can kiss, blah, blah, whatever. So, anyways, my mom pulls me to the side. She's like, Natasha, like, do you want to share something with me? I'm like, no, why? She was like, oh, like, we saw your history. And I was like, what does that mean? And she was like, yeah, we saw, like, what you were doing. And you were looking up, like, if two girls can kiss, like, not everybody likes the opposite sex. Some people, they like the same sex. And I was like, okay. And so she was like, is it that you like girls? And I'm like, no. And she's like, it's okay if you like girls. And I'm like, I like girls and boys. And she's like, okay. And I'm like, yeah, so I'm bisexual. She was like, okay. But then as time went on, it was very apparent to my mom because I would bring boys over and we would be playing video games and we would hang out and all this stuff. And my mom realized how platonic it was. And even like with my boyfriends, I wasn't so like animated. So my mom, I remember, I think I was about 16 years old. And this is before I brought a girl home. And my mom was like, you're very animated around girls. And then with guys, it seems very platonic. Is it that you're a lesbian? And I'm like, no. And she's like, it's okay if you are. But I personally wasn't ready, guys. I wasn't ready, okay? And she was like, all I care about is getting grandkids. Like, and I'm like, you'll get grandkids. Like, I'm not gay, blah, blah. Because I don't want to be, right? So I'm fighting this. So I came out as bisexual really early on. Like I said, let everybody know that I'm bisexual at like 12, 13 years old. So anyways, fast forward. I had girlfriends, I had boyfriends, and then after a certain point, I didn't like the feeling because obviously my culture is not acceptable. Honduran culture, or Caribbean culture. So I suppressed my feelings of like romantic feelings and everything because I was in relationships with men and guys and stuff, and I just never felt fulfilled. So um, I don't know what it is, but it's like I think it's because I never had the romantic attraction and I never really actually had the sexual attraction, if that makes sense. So what I noticed personally for myself would be that, when I'm making out with them, your eyes are closed and you guys are touching and it feels like really nice and your body's reacting, right? It's like a natural thing. But the second I open my eyes and like, they're removing their clothes, it's fine. Because, like, when I see the chest, most of the guys back in the day, they had really, really nice bodies. So, beautiful bodies. But the second I saw the genitalia of what was going on downstairs, I would dry up, like, physically dry up. I'd go from being super, soaking to drying up. And I'm like, that's just so weird. So I would have to imagine a girl, like a curvy girl. And then I would, be able to allow them to enter me basically. Um, and my last four partners noticed. So the monster, um, the guy I was friends with benefits with, um, con artist, and then literally the last two guys that I was with, Cinnabon and what will be my nickname for another one? December. Basically, they all noticed it severely. So how can I say it? Like I said, when you're making out, and it can be anybody. Um, and most of them were good kissers outside of Monsters. I don't know what I was doing with Monster, but anyways, was vulnerable. But everyone else, like they're really, really good kissers. So like, everything's flowing. You guys are touching and feeling and all these things. But like I said, the second they got naked and I saw what was going, it's the second I see what's going on downstairs. My body doesn't like it anymore. It doesn't want it. It doesn't want to be there. So I always had to imagine a girl. And then I remember thinking, like, what would life be like if I could actually just stay wet? And so what happened? So I was always pretending to be boy crazy because I didn't really want people to know and all these things. But it was clear I was attracted to women if you would go out with me and see how I would talk and everything. But anyways, because like I said, I have a platonic relationship with guys. But how my mom knew is because I remember telling her like, how come, like, when you're in a talking phase and you gotta ask these people questions like, oh, so what's your story? Like, tell me where you're from and all these things. Like, I have to force myself to ask these questions and I don't actually care unless it's that I'm trying to be friends with the guy. But like with girls, I care about their story and all that stuff. Like, it's very weird. And my mom's like, it's because we're not into guys. And I'm like, no, like, blah, blah, blah. So, anyways, unfortunately, she passed, and it took 8 years, essentially, like almost 8 years, for me to finally live in my truth. But I know she's so proud of me. So, anyways, how I decided to come out, how I like eventually realized the truth of who I am was what happened. Oh yeah, so the artist Kaylani. For those of you who don't know her, I'm gonna put her picture here. She had a new album that came out and it was called Crash. And I wonder if I'll put it here, either here or here. I'll figure it out. But anyways, so she had a new album that came out called Crash, and it was before the summertime. And I'm listening to it, and it is probably the gayest thing I've ever heard. Like the most lesbian music I've ever heard. Like you're not confused about who she's singing about. Like let's just put it that way. And I liked it, but I liked it as in the sense that I identified with it. So I started looking at her interviews, because I was never really a Kaylani fan. Like, I like her personality and stuff, but I was never like deep into her music. It's just certain songs that I liked, right? But I was like, oh, let me like look at her interviews, and because I remember like when she came out as bisexual, and then she had her daughter, and then she came out like 2.5 years ago as gay, and like never looked back. Has been living as a lesbian, literally. And so well, there was one of the interviews where they were like, "Oh, like what made you make that distinction from being a bisexual woman to a lesbian? Like what made you realize that that's who you were?" And she was talking about her therapist and how her therapist, like she was like, "Oh, I think you're gay." Something about she had her like read a master doc and it's called Am I a Lesbian? And I tell you something funny. My best friends always knew that I was like gay. I'm pretty sure my sisters knew. I mean, I don't talk to plastic anymore. But like definitely, definitely, definitely like my other sister Leticia knew. Um and my best friends were always like, we don't care, like if you marry a woman, like it's fine. Like, and I remember telling my therapist, like, because I was in therapy because I was traumatized and I had to get through the PTSD and everything of being with Monster. And then what happened? Um, After about I want to say 7 months, I felt like I was ready to start dating again, right? Like I wouldn't be super traumatized and scared, right? Like terrified of men. So, what happened? So we were trying to come up with a list of like what my dream guy would be and all these things. And she was like, "Oh, do you want to get married?" And I'm like, "No." She's like, "Okay, like why not?" And I said, "Well, I, I just can't imagine like walking down the aisle saying vows before God in front of people and meaning it with it being a man there across from me." And she was like, "Oh, okay." And I was like, and if I think about like having kids and stuff, I don't know why in my head I imagine stress with a man, whereas I imagine it like very loving and everything with a woman. And she goes, "Well, you do realize you don't have to marry a man. Like, you realize you can just, we don't have to focus on a dream man. You can focus on your dream woman." Like, and I'm like, "No, like, and she was like, "But it sounds like that's what you want." I'm like, "No, because I'm delusional and I'm not ready. I'm not ready." Okay. So, anyways, keep trying to date these men, and it is just not working. And all of them, at least the last four, were like, "Oh, I'm worried that you're gonna leave me for a woman," which is such a weird thing to say. But I guess they noticed me looking at women and all of that, those things. I guess they noticed the connection and everything, and they noticed me drying up like the Sahara Desert once I see downstairs. Okay, so anyways, and it's not that, oh, they haven't, like, I haven't had a guy make me orgasm or anything, but really, in order for me to get to the point of them actually entering me, I genuinely need to see a woman visually. Like, I have to imagine it. I've never, ever, ever looked at straight porn to get off. It's always been lesbian porn or gay porn. And so, yeah. But anyways, so that being said, um, I wasn't ready, but I always said that. And I told her, like, if I imagine, I think part of why I'm like hesitant about having a baby outside of like how expensive it is and like all of the things that it entails is because, like, I personally don't imagine like a guy being helpful to me during pregnancy. Like, I imagine them not understanding what I'm going through, and understanding my body. Whereas, like, I imagine raising a family with a woman. Like, I imagine I get pregnant first, and then after 2 years, I'm healed, and then she gets pregnant, and I dote on her throughout her pregnancy, and that's how our dynamic is. And then we have, a man too, because I do believe that men are obviously like imperative for certain things and stuff. But I genuinely, personally would like to live a female centered life. Because I have a lot of women in my family. Um, there's guys I feel connected to, but it's through friendship. And yeah, that's just like how I feel about it. It's more a platonic thing. So, anyways, back to Kaylani's interviews. So, because I clearly went on a tangent here. But so in her interview, she said that she sent her a document called a master doc called "Am I Lesbian?" And that's how she knew. And I'm like, "Oh, okay." So immediately, me being the researcher that I am a very resourceful person. I went and I was like, "Am I lesbian? Like, let me look for this." And I read that document, and I'm not gonna say everything because there were certain things about Compet that I was like, right. But when I read that document, when they were talking about like attraction is supposed to feel nice, I identified with that. Because when I think about it, it's like they were saying, like, you can find celebrity men attractive and you can find men attractive and not want to do anything. And I'm like, that's what it is. Like, I'll see a guy, I'm like, he has a nice body, he's good looking, he dresses nice. I can acknowledge it, but I don't want to do anything with him. And even so, for example, my man is Morris Chestnut. I think he's by far one of the most beautiful men I've ever seen in my life. I still don't want to do anything with him. I just want his sperm to have his babies, like to have like the genes from him. But I don't want to do anything with him. I just think he's gorgeous and I want to be his friend. Like, I literally want to be around him and I want him to be there in my child's life, if that makes sense. Like, so they have a father figure. Um, and so that's the weird thing about it. And so I realized that I'm like, I can find a man attractive, but I don't want to do anything with them. Whereas with a woman, like there's some women I find them attractive and I want to be their friend. Like I'm literally like, oh, she looks cool. I want to be her friend. But then there's women I find attractive and I want to do things with them and to them. Like I want to know your story. I want to be around you. Like there's so many things. It's not like pulling teeth to get me to ask you questions about yourself, if that makes sense. And so I read this Am I a Lesbian document and I was like, Jesus Christ, I've literally always been gay. Like I'm a lesbian. That's where the disconnect with men comes from. Because even when I care about them and things, it's not really romantic, you know? Um, and I think that's also why like the cheating doesn't hurt as much. It's very weird. Um, so yeah. And I think that's also why I never had an issue with monogamous relationships in that aspect where like I never cheated on them with another man. Like it just never happened. Like um because I never wanted to, you know? There was no temptation. There was no man that was temptation for me. Like when I look at it and now I understand it. And so yeah, so that's when I realized it was that document that it was talking about comp het and there are things about it that I totally agree, like compulsory heterosexuality. Um and I'm like, holy crap, I'm a lesbian. And so that's when I realized, and I'm like, okay, then I just need to live in my truth. I don't ever have to kiss or date a man again because that's what I was dreading. Like having to try to pretend is like the hardest thing. Um, and so I decided to live my truth and I wrote about it on my threads, my Instagram. And then, yeah, started putting it all over my profile and got my little rainbow wristband, and since then I never looked back, and started going on dates with women and loving it. And I mean, even though lesbian drama is ghetto, we're going to talk about that as well, but I'm happy because I realize I get to live my life in the way that I want. Now obviously, now that I'm back living in the States, I am not necessarily sure. I mean, I'm still not sure if I want to have children, still not sure if I want to get married, but because I have children in my life that I love and I love teaching children now and it's amazing. But um so it's not like I have a childless life. I'm living a child-free life in a sense for me. And so but with that being said, um I'm happy because I realize like, oh, I can actually just marry a woman. Like, I can actually just be with a woman. I can actually choose to have a family with a woman, like get a sperm donor and all of that stuff. And so that makes me happy. I mean, I don't know how long that's going to be possible now that we have the trumpet as a president. But definitely that was something that I was like, wow, like I'm so grateful to be able to live this life. And so, yeah, so that's essentially my story. That's when I realized. That's when it came out. And so yeah, um, I'm happy. It's interesting, but I know I'm a lipstick lesbian, so nobody looks at me and thinks I'm gay, but trust me, I'm literally the gayest thing. Like if you hear me talk, it's very clear, but I think like when you don't know me, you look at me, I'm very feminine presenting. I'm like the most feminine woman I know. And I get it from my mom. So I'm like super feminine. And I know that that's why it's like hard for people to think like, what, she likes Gucci? Like, yes, I do. I love that shit. So, anyways, that being said, I now live in my truth. And that's how I came to terms with it. It was like a journey of, 2 decades of like hiding, even though nobody was surprised, which pissed me off when it came out. There was literally nobody shocked. Um, but so they robbed me. They robbed me being like, what? You're gay? You're a lesbian? Are you fucking serious? No way. Like, like nobody behaved like that. And I was very much so the upset. Not even my niece or nephew. Anyways, the ghetto. But I'm happy to be living in my truth because I get to be who I've always been. And I'm no longer afraid. Like I'm no longer having to pretend on dates. Do you know what I mean? I don't have to, like, it's not pulling teeth to get me to ask you questions about yourself. Like, I actually care. And now, when I go to have friendships with men, I can actually have those platonic friendships with them without, I mean, I'm not, I have to make it clear, like, dude, I'm gay and I, you know, you have no chance with me. But like outside of that, like, I can actually live like a fulfilled, loving relationship, platonic relationship with the men that I choose to have in my life as friends. And yeah, I can live a female centered life. And I love it. I'm very grateful for the time that I grew up in because I know that this would only be possible in this time. I think it would be immensely difficult if I grew up in my mom's time because my mom was Gen X. And so, yeah, and obviously I'm a millennial. So, yeah, but that's my coming out story. Um, and yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed. Please comment what you think was interesting about it, and I'll catch you guys in the next video. So, on that note, I'm going to say bye, divas. Remember, divas, loving yourself is the first secret to happiness. So, be your own reason to smile. I'll see you in the next video. Bye.